test run this evening for councils before we start sending it out to the public in the foreseeable future. So this is a test run, and obviously anybody can come and have a look from council perspective, and anybody else, I assume, after the meeting to see how it went, and brush it up for live streaming in the short foreseeable future. Thank you. As determined by the Glamorgan Spring Bay Council, all ordinary special meetings of council will be electronically audio recorded from April 2014 onwards, plus what I've just said. In accordance with the Local Government Act 1993 and Regulation 33, these audio files will be retained by council for at least 6 months and made available for listening on written request by any person. The written minutes of the meeting, once confirmed, prevail over audio recordings of that meeting. So once again, councillors, members of the public, a warm welcome along this evening. Apologies from Councillor Gattart. It's the only apology that I have this evening. All other councillors are in presence. Declaration of pecuniary interest. Any councillor have any issues with the agenda this evening, with any perceived conflicts of interest or pecuniary interest? Councillors? No? 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 Agenda item 2, confirmation of minutes and workshops. 2.1, ordinary meeting 22nd of August 2017. The recommendation that the minutes of the ordinary meeting held on Tuesday the 22nd of August 2017 being confirmed as a true and correct record. Someone care to move that to be correct? Councillor Woods, seconder. Deputy Mayor, all those in favour?
Aye.
Against?
I wasn't present, Mayor Kemp.
Okay, so are you abstaining?
Well, I wasn't present, so I can't say they're true.
Right, okay.
I'm here.
So,
You
you were here? Yep, okay. Right. So that recommendation is carried. 2.2, special meeting in closed session. Minutes of the special meeting council held on the 12th of September in closed session be confirmed as a true and correct record. Thank you.
Mr Mayor, I'll move that the minutes of the special meeting of council held on Tuesday 12th of September 2016 in closed session be confirmed as a true and correct record.
Thank you. Second, Deputy Mayor.
Mayor King, can I just confirm we're talking about version 2, not version 1 that was sent out?
Ms Turvey, version 2.
Thank you.
All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you.
I'm abstaining
sorry.
from that. Yeah, I'm abstaining from that because I'm,
Abstaining?
yep,
Okay.
wasn't there for the whole
So,
meeting.
You need to name
Yeah,
them.
so Councillor Crawford's abstaining.
Yeah, I
from-
wasn't there for that whole meeting. So.
I wasn't either.
And Councillor Parker and Councillor Wisby abstaining. Thank you. Agenda item 3, Planning Authority section. Under Regulation 25 of the Local Government Meeting Procedures Regulations 2005, the chairperson hereby declares that the council is now acting as a planning authority under the provisions of the Land Use Planning Approvals Act 1993 for section 3 of the agenda. The recommendation now is the council acts as a planning authority. Moved Councillor Crawford, second Councillor Woods. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Councillors, there's one item being removed from the planning approvals, which is 3.2. That has been removed at this stage. It's still going through some legal issues. Thank you. Moving on to 3.1, Swansea Public Toilets. The recommendation on the toilets is on page 14. So someone care to move the recommendation? No takers on the recommendation. Councillor Woods, seconder. Deputy Mayor. Okay,
Sorry, Mr Mayor, I'll be with you in a second.
okay. Page 14.
Thank
councillor.
you. I'll move that pursuant to section 54 of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 and the Glamorgan Spring Bay Interim Planning Scheme 2015, that the application for two public toilet buildings elevated access platform and alterations to existing public toilets building at the Swansea foreshore west of Jetty Road with access from Franklin Street, DA 2016/002226 be approved to the subject conditions 1 through to 5.
Thank you. It's open for discussion, councillors. Councillor Risby.
Thanks, Mayor Kent. In reading this, the acceptable solutions, this doesn't comply with height, setback from frontage or landscaping, and quite significantly when it comes to height. I won't be voting for this today because I feel it detracts from one of the town's major tourism assets, being the foreshore Jubilee Beach picnic area and the view across to Great Oyster Bay. So I won't be supporting this today.
Thank you. Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, Mayor Kent. There's 3 toilet blocks adjacent to the commercial and residential area and within the coastal park in a town of population of 700 people. Makes no sense aesthetically, environmentally or economically. The original streetscape for Swansea that happened about 10 years ago had the original boardwalk that part of this takes up as wider and longer, with perhaps in future the use to be used for street markets and whatever. That's already been cut down in the actual width, and now the length will go as well, with no possibility of that being achieved in future. Also in that original streetscape that was done by Hobart City Council was a toilet block with showers and other things down closer to where the boat ramp is, which means that people could use it with for children, whatever, much safer and whatever. So I won't be supporting this, as Councillor Wisby said. 9.4.1 about the building height, the acceptable solutions. Building height must be no more than 6.5 metres. Performance criteria, building height must satisfy all of the following: be consistent with the desired future character statements provided for the area, be no more than 8.5. That is actually a performance criteria, not an acceptable solution. It's over 14 metres, so it's significantly higher. 19.4.2 about the setback from the frontage. The acceptable is no less than 5 metres. Its building setback must satisfy all of the following. It's a 0 setback. Be consistent with desired future character statements provided for the area. And B, enhance the characteristics of the site, adjoining lots and the streetscape, which it does not do. Landscaping. Okay, the acceptable landscaping along the frontage of a site must be provided to a depth of no less than 2 metres. The performance criteria, landscaping must be provided to satisfy all of the following 4 dot points, and it actually doesn't achieve any of those. Under the Waterway and Coastal Protection Code, the acceptable solution, A1, must be in the building area on plan. The performance criteria, building and works within a waterway and coastal protection area must satisfy all of the following. Number A, avoid or mitigate impact on natural values. If you then have a look at what the natural value definition, natural values means biodiversity, environmental flows, etc., river condition, and waterway and or coastal values. The definition for coastal values in the interim planning scheme is coastal values means the values of coastal areas derived from their coastal habitat and vegetation, physical elements, landscape values, recreational values, and economic values, and the process and functions that underpin them. I actually would argue to councillors that the landscape values and recreational values are not actually, do not comply with the interim planning scheme. So I won't be supporting this today. Thank you.
Any other councillor, any comment? Over to the planner, sorry, councillor Woods.
Oh, sorry,
So,
Mr
no,
Mayor,
just-
if you're going to go to the planning.
You had a comment there.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I can only assume Councillor Crawford has an older copy of the planning scheme. The performance criteria for height, this is extracted from the planning scheme as it is now, is copied there on page 11 at 7.4. There are 3 criteria. There was, in the original version of the interim scheme, there was an 8.5 metre height limit in that performance criteria. That was removed as part of discussions with other councils in southern Tasmania. All the planners from the southern Tasmanian councils agreed that that kind of control was not necessary. It was not appropriate to have an absolute maximum control on height, and that's a general principle that's been applied, and a number of zones have been subject to similar sorts of amendments to remove those absolute maximums and minimums. So the height is, the performance criteria is as it there, it is copied on page 11. In terms of the other matters, I really can't see that how the performance criteria is not met, particularly the waterway and coastal protection area. In applying that clause, it's necessary to look beyond just what's written in the planning scheme and to actually look at what's on the ground. Now, I'm not saying there aren't any values there as such, but essentially it's a modified parkland area, and development on that for a public toilet building is not going to impede any sort of natural values to any unreasonable extent. And we are looking to provide some conditions there just to ensure that the construction process properly managed so that there are no construction related impacts either.
Thank you. Councillor Woods, you want to comment?
No, I'll reserve.
Reserve. Councillor Crawford.
I just have a further question to the planner then on that. Under the coastal values, has that definition changed, or is recreational values still included in that? Because I'm actually talking about landscape values and recreational values, as in actually having a toilet, like if you're at a picnic or something, you know, someone using a toilet above you and that, so it's about recreational values as well. So is that still in there?
Through the Mayor, yes it is, but you need to look at what the actual recreational value or natural value or landscape value is in the particular circumstances of the case. It can't just be applied uniformly, and it doesn't just mean that because you're in a recreational area you can't develop any particular type of building.
Any further discussion, councillors? Councillor Woods.
Just put the vote, Mr Mayor. I don't need to say anything.
No further. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour of the recommendation? Councillor Steiner, Deputy Mayor, myself, Councillor Wood. Against? Councillor Wisbech, Crawford, Parkett. Motion is carried 4 to 3. Thank you. Agenda item 3.3, dwelling and outbuildings 48 Swanwick Drive, Coles Bay. Recommendation is on page 11. Someone prepared to move that recommendation, councillors? Deputy Mayor?
Oh, yeah, the recommendation on page 61,
No? Where am I?
page 61,
I've gone,
3.3.
sorry, I've gone too far, I think.
I think you're going to pick up.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. So, yep.
All right. Pursuant to section 57 of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 and Glamorgan Spring Bay Interim Planning Scheme 2015, the application for a dwelling, visitor accommodation building and outbuilding at 48 Swanwick Drive, Coles Bay, DA 2017/00177, be approved subject to conditions 1 to 11 in the agenda.
Seconder for that motion. Councillor Steiner. Open for discussion, councillors. Councillor Woods.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you to the planner, on page 61 in the representors and the first one, it says at the bottom, the buildings cannot be shifted closer to Swanwick Drive without invoking a new discretion. Could you please explain that one, please?
Through the Mayor, within the zone, the low-density residential zone, the foreshore boundary is also classified as a rear boundary, and there's a 4 metre setback to the rear boundary or the
Page you want?
Sorry, I haven't copied that clause in the actual scheme, but basically there's a 4 metre setback in the zone from the rear boundary. The way the rear boundary is defined, it corresponds to the foreshore.
Thank you.
Any further comment, councillors? Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, Mayor Kent. I have, first of all, a query or question to the planner. On page 60, under 8.2, well, there's two things there, but I've asked you about the drainage there and the stormwater. That needs to be, oh, sorry, that's page 57, beg your pardon. On the 7.7 near the top of the page, the stormwater. Does that need to be conditioned? Because I think there is mention from the technical officer's report on 60 about the stormwater will need to be retained on site, and advice should be included on this in any permit granted. So I'm just asking about that, please.
Through the Mayor, in these sorts of cases, we generally just use advice on the permit, so I don't include the advice in the recommendations to council, but most permits go out with 10 or 12 points of advice, and if we've identified that there isn't a stormwater connection to that, we'll include that in advice so that when they go to the building stage that they're aware of that. But it'll get controlled through the plumbing permit process and the building permit process.
Just a further question on that through the chair. So my question is that will that be collected reuse on site, or is it likely to be soakage on site?
Through the Mayor, I believe it's really up to the owner as to exactly what they want to do. At a minimum, it would need to be to a tank with an overflow soakage trench.
Thank you. The other thing that I actually have a problem with, councillors, if you have a look on page it's the last page actually. There is actually two driveways to this. That concerns me, particularly with the boat ramp just being down the road. There's always trailers and cars parked. It's pretty heavily used, and with two actually entrances to this property, that actually takes away that kind of park. So I'm going to ask the planner about that. It's
Through the Mayor, the planning scheme does allow as an acceptable solution in the car parking code 1 access per frontage. So if you're on a corner block, you do have a right to have 2 accesses, 1 on each.
sorry, Mayor Kent, just through that, a right to, but is it really concerns me. There's actually, like, there's always just like cars parked along here, which then will take probably one car park away with a you know, with there's limited parking already for boats and trailers. And so by having two entrances, it significantly impact that kind of area. So is it actually a right or is there something that, it's not achievable? Because it's come about really because people are actually trying to put a dwelling as well as visitor accommodation on a block that's perhaps doesn't suit that. So
through the mayor, it is an acceptable solution. So it is effectively a right. The planning scheme is saying an access on each road on a corner block is fine. There's no discretion. There's no element of kind of a debate really on that. Look, I take the point about the car parking. To me, I'm not sure that we necessarily as a council encourage people to park everywhere through there, and perhaps that's something that would need to be looked at as part of the ongoing management of that arrangement. But I think overall it's likely to lose a space. At peak times, I don't think that's necessarily going to make a huge difference. At peak times, there will be a lot of cars parked there regardless. They may just have to be another 10 metres away.
Any further questions, Councillor? Councillor Wisby?
I won't be supporting this today. I don't understand why we have rules if the foreshore height, 5 metre height, is specified in the Coastal Development Code. This is 6.8. Foreshore setback, a 15 metre foreshore setback is the acceptable solution requirement, and this has a 5.1 metre setback. Possibly with less, probably like Councillor Crawford said, there's a lot of buildings being fit on, onto a block that's not suitable for it, and maybe if a suitable building was designed on that block, it would fit the acceptable solution. So I won't be supporting this today.
Councillor Crawford?
I just want a clarification on page 54 at 6.5, where it says the outbuilding is assessed on the basis that it is associated with the dwelling and not the visitor accommodation building, despite being attached to the visitor accommodation building. I just want a clarification on what that actually means.
What that means, what the applicant has told council, is that effectively there are three structures as part of this application. There's the house, there's the garage and carport with the access from Swanwick Drive, and the visitor accommodation around that. Now, their advice to me is that the garage and carport structure there is part of their dwelling use, it's not a garage for the visitor accommodation building.
Any further questions, Councillor? The motion, all those in favour? Councillor Woods, Councillor Parker, myself, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Simon, those against, Councillor Crawford, Councillor Wisby, the motion is carried. Thank you. Agenda item 3.4, additions and alterations to 7 Florence Street, Coles Bay. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Pursuant to Section 57 of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 and Glamorgan Spring Bay Interim Planning Scheme 2015, the application for additions and applications to alterations to a dwelling at 7 Florence Court, Coles Bay, DO 2017/00184, be approved subject to the conditions and a reworded Condition 2, which councillors have in front of them. Condition 2 would read, the vertical timber slats attached to the deck stairs and facing the adjoining property to the southwest must be extended to all southwest facing parts of the deck and stairs and be extended to a height of at least 1.7 metres to provide for the protection of privacy to the adjoining property. The spacing of the timber slats must be no more than that shown on the endorsed plans. In lieu of all or some of the vertical timber slats, an alternative and equivalent means of privacy protection may be considered but must be first approved in writing by Council's General Manager prior to the commencement of any building work. All appropriate documentation and plans submitted for building approval must demonstrate compliance with the above, or work required by the above must be completed within 1 month of the first use of the deck. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Right, we have a second of that recommendation. Councillor Woods. Open for discussion, councillors. Councillor Wisby.
Again, on this one, Mayor Kent, the height, acceptable solution is 5 metres, and this is 8.5. And the foreshore setback is 15 metres, and this is 5.1 metres. I won't be supporting this.
Any other councillors' comments? Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, Mayor Kent. Councillors might remember that we actually had another development application in Florence Street in the last year or so. This maybe is a kind of a reminder, I suppose, that maybe that is the entrance to Freycinet Drive from Florence. It's obliquely related to the planning thing, is one of the most dangerous intersections I've driven through, and I might bring that questions without notice, so about whether something can happen there. I just wanted to, from what Councillor Wisby was saying, I actually went and had a look at the last development application in this area that came, and on the foreshore there is a buffer of trees, but what I would actually like to see as part of the planning authority is actually what the impact is from, you will see on councils on the page, say 81, on the bottom corner with that vegetation, or just it might be better. That goes into like Coles Bay in that little. I'm just sorry, just to that little bay there. So you're actually looking across the bay into this these houses here. And for me, what's more probably important is what actually, with that extra height, that you can actually see from that bay, whether it has a visual impact from the sea and from that bay. And I don't actually really have that information before me, so I actually won't be supporting it because of actually my lack of knowledge on how much that impacts the view from the bay. At the moment with the others, yeah, they're hidden well from that vegetation if it stays there. So, yeah, I won't be supporting it today.
Other councillors? No further comment, councillors. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Councillor Woods, Councillor Parker, Deputy Mayor, Councillor Steiner, myself, 4, Councillor Wisby against, and Councillor Crawford against. Motion's carried. Thank you, councillors. Agenda item 3.5 is dwelling and outbuildings. I'd ask the General Manager to be kind enough to leave while this is being discussed. I understand he doesn't have to leave, but he said he would, and he has left. Okay, the recommendation is on page, over here a minute ago, page 108. Someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll move that pursuant to section 57 of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act 1993 and the Glamorgan Spring Bay Interim Planning Scheme 2015, that the application for dwelling and outbuilding at Lot 1 RA 11610 Tasman Highway, Little Swamport, DA 207 2017/000196 be approved subject to the following conditions, 1 to 2.
Have a seconder for that recommendation, councillors. Councillor Steiner. Open for discussion, councillors. Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, Mayor Kent. I have a problem with this. I have a few questions to actually ask the planner on this. With the subdivision, when the subdivision went through, it said stage development. The subdivision development must not be carried out in stages except in accordance with the stage development plan submitted to and approved by council as general manager. Is this now a stage development, or? Because I'll just give it a little bit more, that certainly hasn't been, the entrance to lot 2 and 3 hasn't been achieved, so.
Look, through the mayor, I haven't got the subdivision file with me, and I haven't had need to look through that for some time. I'd have to take that on notice.
Okay, I'll just speak against the thing. Also in that subdivision, councillors, it says, and this is one that we passed in July 2015, there's a Part 5 agreement. The Part 5 agreement says a dwelling is discretionary only if integral to the agricultural use and will not be approved by council on any lot unless there is an approved site management plan for that lot. Council is satisfied that substantial commencement of an intensive agriculture activity has occurred, and that the dwelling would not conflict with neighbouring activities. The council must be satisfied that the rural activity shall be of the primary activity on the lot. Well, that hasn't happened, and that's actually Part 5 agreement, so I'm a little bit stuck on that. I suppose I'll go to the planner on that.
Mr. Planner, your comment?
The application is made on the basis that the dwelling and outbuilding, and to be honest, I don't think it's necessarily best classified as an outbuilding. It is an agricultural building. The dwelling and the outbuilding are to be used in association with agricultural activities on the site. I don't think there's any question about that. There was an extensive level of work and assessment undertaken at the subdivision stage to assess really what the agricultural potential of the land is. This application is prepared following on from all of that work undertaken and agricultural studies undertaken. The house is situated at a part of the block where those reports say the agricultural potential is limited or less so. The development, this application maintains the most usable and most the land with the best agricultural potential is free for agricultural use.
I'm not actually,
and the application is made on the basis with supporting documentation to say that this house is associated with agricultural use.
Okay, thank you.
through you, Mayor Kent, it says each lot owner will be required to produce a farm management plan. What I'm actually asking, is there a farm management plan that actually has been? So we don't have that. The farm management plan for this block, which is also that the substantial commencement of intensive agricultural activity.
Through the mayor, look, I don't have the Part 5 agreement with me to know exactly what you're reading from and to concur one way or the other. There was an agricultural report done though at the subdivision stage that said these blocks that were created were suitable for various types of purposes, and if the application or future development occurred in accordance with those existing reports, then there was no need for any further farm management reports. What there is a requirement to show that the house is associated with agricultural use, and I think that has been satisfied.
Thank you, Mayor Kent. I'll just speak now to the thing I've asked my questions. Thank you. Councillors, it actually says that, and that's a Part 5 agreement, we talked about this extensively, about agricultural land being used for hobby farms or whatever, and councillors might remember when that came through, that to stop that from happening on a 20 acres, there was three lot subdivision. And what I was reading from when the planner asked is actually that.
So, the recommendation is to, do what?
It's already a mover and a second, isn't it?
Yeah.
So there's already a live motion that council approves the grant.
So it's there as a recommendation, and obviously, yes, Deputy Mayor.
Oh, Mr Mayor, I support Councillor Wisby and Councillor Crawford. I'm not sure that we can actually deal with it because our guidelines do actually say applications must be from non-profit organisations and are they a non-profit? It doesn't say incorporated, it says applications must be from non-profit organisations. And it does say $500, but however, in certain circumstances, council may consider increasing the allocation. So I think the $800 is not an issue. It's whether this group actually meets the criteria of being a not-for-profit organisation.
Mayor, can I just clarify, is that the 2006 edition that you're looking at? Because council's definitely upgraded that policy to $1,000, definitely. So I think it'll be nice to defer it till next meeting if the person who moved the motion and the seconder agree.
If I
I'll
may,
put
Mr
a
Mayor, this is
procedure.
actually dated the 25th of October 2006, as you suggest, councillor, but it must have been amended in 2009 by council approval 06409. So I'm making an assumption that this one I've got here is that 2009 version.
Yeah.
And it's not online, it's what I've got in my computer.
I've got a procedure motion that we defer this item 7.1 to the next council meeting.
We have a seconder? Councillor Wisby. Any further discussion?
No discussion on procedural.
No, procedural, right, deferred, all those in favour? Unanimous, carried, thank you. Agenda item 8, have I missed any? Future involves Swansea Courthouse and council offices. Discussion, councillors?
Yes, Mr Mayor, if I may, I'd like to commend Councillor Steiner and Deputy Mayor Arnold on this report. Very well written and totally supported.
If I may, Mr Mayor, Councillor Woods, we're indebted to the Swansea Courthouse Management Committee for the information that's in it.
Any further discussion, councillors? Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, Mayor Kent. I'd also like to thank Councillor Steiner for the background information she's prepared for council on this issue. I support her sentiment that, quote, this courthouse building has a history that is so unique and so culturally valuable that to allow it to be lost to the community and sold to private enterprise for any price would be an irreversible error of judgment. However, I also believe that for council to only give a commitment to retaining the Swansea Courthouse and council office in public ownership for just over a year will limit the success of the proposal. So it's for this reason that I'd like to move an amendment to point 3 and 4, so that number 3 would now read that council retain the Swansea Courthouse and council office in public ownership until the 30th of December 2021 to allow the new committee time to prove the business plan. And number 4, that the Swansea Courthouse Management Committee presents an annual report to council that includes their current financial position, future intentions and alignment to their business plan to the year 2021.
Procedural motion, we've seconded.
sorry,
It's an amended motion.
yeah,
do
so,
need a
sorry,
second.
Ms. Turvey, would you like me to just to read number 3? That council retain the Swansea Courthouse and council office in public ownership until the 30th of December 2021. So that's, and number 4, is that the Swansea Courthouse Management Committee presents an annual report to council that includes their current financial position, future intentions, and alignment to their business plan for the year 2021.
Right,
Is the amendment,
clear?
could I like to speak to the amendment, please? The reason, councillors, I think that...
Point of order, Mr Mayor, there's no seconder to the
Oh,
amendment.
sorry, beg pardon.
Councillor Wisby,
I'll second, thank you.
all those in favour? No motion? Yeah, well, oh, sorry, you're the one.
To the amendment,
Yeah,
please,
Okay,
Mayor Kent.
apologies.
It's okay. The reason I think that the 4-year commitment is more appropriate to this venture than only a 1-year guarantee, the committee will be made up of volunteers, stated, committed and usually busy people that recognise this is an ongoing project that will need sustained commitment of their time and energy to be successful. There needs to be trust from both sides, council and the committee, to enable the best outcomes for the project and the community. As councils will be aware, to apply for significant grants takes time, more time and energy to write. And as we as council should not expect volunteers to take this type of task on without a guarantee that if successful, the grant will be still relevant. Also, in relationships to grants, quite often money needed for works done does not fit the criteria for a grant that year, but may do so in the following year. So once again, a shovel-ready grant application would be waiting for an appropriate grant, but we cannot expect volunteers to put time and effort into writing something that might not eventuate. Also being allowed an extension on the time commitment to the business plan, projects and conservation works can more easily be prioritised and executed in a timely manner. And certainly council has seen in our budgets what things that we've done in stages over different time for many years. Also, as mentioned previously, most volunteers working at a level of management committee lead busy lives, and for some reason their business plan prediction, if for some reason their business plan prediction were totally out of order and unattainable, then basically council's guarantee is that it would be highly unlikely that a high calibre committee such as the one that's proposed would report to council and look for some solution for the conservation of the Swansea Courthouse and council chambers. So if it's not going to work, the management committee are not going to just keep pretending it's going to work. They actually find a different solution. So I think we need to put trust in this committee and actually give them like a guarantee that they'll actually have 4 years, but obviously reviewed and looked at and reported to council annually on that. So I would actually ask for your support today on the amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Steiner.
I'd like to respond to that, Mr Mayor, to Councillor Crawford. In actually putting this motion together, the things that were key to the Deputy Mayor and myself, as well as the management committee that's in place at the moment, is it's actually about the ability for this management committee or this future management committee that will be put in place to be able to structure the committee and its business in a way that is viable and is going to be viable for the next whatever. If it remains in public ownership, then it needs to be viable long term. So this was never about, this 12-month period was never about the committee having to go for funds to have a look at how they can approach, the money raising and all that sort of thing. It was purely to set up the committee so that it becomes viable in terms of membership and also in terms of the support that they can organise from the community to actually run this enterprise in a way that's going to be profitable or at least pay for the ongoing costs of the building. And I think that's all that council actually expects, is that those ongoing costs are covered. It's not in terms of profit at all. The committee has been in place, this present committee has been in place, or the structure's been set up for 1 year. And to me, and I think the committee will agree, they haven't been able to fulfil what they set out to fulfil. That's why I feel that it's actually good to have an extension of 12 months to see that that structure can be put in place, and council, I'm sure, will support that as much as we can. I know I will, and Deputy Mayor Arnold will. So it's really about making sure that they have a strong structure rather than any fundraising abilities at this stage of the game.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Mr Mayor, I'd just like to endorse Councillor Steiner's comments. It was never about not trusting anybody in terms of running the courthouse or anything like that. And certainly from my perspective, I commend the current committee for what they have done. As Councillor Steiner said, this is effectively an extension of the previous agreement for the courthouse, which was only for a short period of time. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wisby.
Thanks, Mayor Kent. I agree with Councillor Crawford. I think a 4-year period gives some certainty to the people who are putting up their hand, their volunteers. I think that any opportunity to raise funds needs to be taken over the next 12 months if an opportunity comes up. Like it's the original motion, and I know that this is what I don't understand, is that it will remain in public ownership until the 30th of December. So, you can't go out and get a grant on that basis. Nobody's going to give you any money on that basis. And I think I agree with Councillor Crawford that we give the people some time to put in place a plan and work on this as a community and see what they can do with it. And by reporting back annually, council will certainly be in amongst it and know exactly what's doing and possibly have some positive input. So I support the amendment.
Thank you. Any further comment, Councillor Wood?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. If I may, through you to Councillor Arnold and or Councillor Steiner. You said you worked extensively with the committee that's there in place at the moment, or you had worked with them a bit. They helped you with the writing of this. What are their thoughts? The committee now that is in place now, what are their thoughts on this motion that's been put to council?
Mr Mayor, if I may answer Councillor Woods. They actually responded yesterday with an email to say that they didn't agree with the third point about ownership being extended till December 2018, that they wanted to, and I think for the reasons that maybe Councillor Crawford has pointed out, that they wanted to have some assurity around the fact that it was long term and people would feel they could commit, and it was not something that was going to fall down, in the next period of time. And I've responded to that as well and said, well, these are my reasons why I think it should stay as it is in terms of the motion. I was asked to then put it anyway because I said, do you still want me to put the motion? And they said, yes, we still want you to put it because we want to hear what other councillors have to say about it. So that's where it was left.
Thank you.
Mr Mayor, if I may, I think there's one other point that probably needs to be raised, is that this council, the life of this particular council is finished in October 2018. It may be that we won't even exist as a council as that. So should we reasonably commit a future council, be that Glamorgan Spring Bay or another iteration of that, to a longer term? And that.
Councillor Crawford.
I'm not sure. I'm happy to sum up for the amendment, but I'm not sure if councillors are...
Any further discussion from other councillors?
No, I don't.
Go, Councillor
Okay, just
Crawford.
briefly, Councillor Steiner talked about strong structure. I'd ask councillors if you're actually asked to put in a lot of effort, to create a strong structure in a committee that might or might not exist after a year. I think that most people wouldn't really be that happy to do that. So I'd like to say that I actually think the 4 years gives people opportunity. Just in response to Deputy Mayor's observation about the 2008 elections, all the more reason not to support it. Well, we're supporting dams, we're supporting this as a council and whatever, that are actually going a long time into the future. And I think, if there's a new council or whatever and they actually find it, they can still actually change this. It's whether we think at the time that it's a good opportunity to basically have set up a capacity for strong structure committee to actually, and committed committee to actually work over the next 4 years. Remember, reporting back to council, that I'd like for council to show a bit of faith in the committee and support the amendment, please. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
Mr Mayor, I'd just like to make one comment, and that is
Point
that...
of order, I've
I'm
actually
sorry,
summed up
sorry.
on the amendment.
You'd finished or not?
Yeah, but that's
Okay.
summing up.
Right. Okay, so we'll put the amendment. All those in favour? Councillor Wisby, Councillor Crawford, Councillor Woods, Councillor Parker. Those against? Deputy Mayor, Councillor Steiner and myself. How many is that? 4-3? 4-3. Is that correct? Yes. So the motion's recommendation, or the motion is carried.
The amendment is carried.
amendment.
You now have to put that as a motion.
Sorry?
You now have to put it as a motion.
It's okay. It's up as a motion now, councillors. So we vote again. All is in favour? Councillor Crawford, Councillor Wisby, Councillor Parker and Councillor Woods. Against? Deputy Mayor, Councillor Steiner and myself. The motion is and recommendations are carried. Thank you. Agenda item 9, audit panel minutes of the Glamorgan Spring Bay Council. They're there for perusal. Any questions, comments from councillors? No comment, questions on the audit? Thank you. Agenda item 10, miscellaneous correspondence. Comments, councillors? Agenda item 11, motion tracking document. Comments, questions, councillors? Nothing? Okay. Agenda item 12, questions without notice from councillors. Any questions, Councillor Crawford?
Mayor Kent, just a question to Mr. Pollard. Just regarding earlier on the today with one of the development applications in Florence Street in Coles Bay. I'm wondering if the intersection of Florence Street and Fresnay Drive intersection could be looked at, please. It's just, as I said, it's on a rise and it's on a blind corner. I don't know if mirrors or, and if that's, obviously Mr. Pollard's expertise, but I just think it might warrant can be had a look at and see if somehow something can be done to improve it for safety. Thanks.
Thank you. No further questions without notice. Councillor Woods.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a really hard question for me to ask, but I'm going to ask it. I'm going to put it through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Wisby, Councillor Crawford and Councillor Parker. We were elected by our ratepayers and given the fact that there's been a report in the Mercury, I never said Daily Lies or the Muggery, the walkout at the last meeting, is this in the best interest of ratepayers? And is this going to be a recurring stunt if you don't like or get what it is you're aiming to, what you want? And is it your aim to put this council into a dysfunctional mode? And is this doing that a interest? Is that interest? Sorry, I'm getting muddled. Is that in the interest of the ratepayers or yourselves? Thank you.
I'd like to answer that, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Parker.
Councillor Woods, as the first person to get up and walked out the other night, I moved an amendment at that meeting. You had a chance to actually represent the people of this community. You choose not to. So that was the reason I walked out. I walked out that I felt that what was happening behind closed doors was not in the best interest of this community.
Thank you.
Okay. No further questions from notice.
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to make a comment. I was disappointed to see the report in today's paper, but in response to Councillor Parker, the matter was being dealt with in accordance with the Local Government Act, and we weren't doing anything wrong, Councillor Parker.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor Kent. I would just, I'm not going to make a comment except that I actually am quite offended and say it's disrespectful. It was not a stunt. Certainly on my behalf, it was not a stunt. I left the meeting. I didn't walk out. I didn't storm out. I left the meeting. And that's my right to do.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I always
What you want.
represent my
And through you, Mr. Mayor, if I may, and I'll close it down now, given that I
No,
actually
Councillor Woods, please don't close it down, because I'd like to make a comment
Well, I
that
won't-
how
yeah.
Councillor Crawford has said that she found your comment disrespectful. Well, I'm sorry, I found the actions of those three councillors at a special meeting of council to deal with a matter that could rightfully be dealt with under the Local Government Act meeting procedures, totally disrespectful to the councillor that was concerned, to this council and to the community. Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion, councillors?
No, thank you, Mr.
No, okay. On that basis, we will now thank the public for being with us and this evening and go into a closed session on confidential items. Thank you very much,
So you're going,
ladies and gentlemen.
going again, here we go again. Again, disrespectful to the community. Unbelievable. Whose interest? So therefore, we are again, Mr. Mayor, without a quorum.
So,
And there's two things that need to be dealt with, not just one.
Just hang on.
No,
No,
Chuck it
it's
in.
still public here. Just wait for public go. Mr Pollard, you're excused, and Mr Planner, you're excused, but you should close the door.